Great, thank you. Yes, I'm Sam. Nice to meet you all. Thanks for having me. I thought I'd tell you a couple of things about me to begin with. I live in North London and I enjoy cycling. I was able to cycle here, which is a real treat. I thought I'd record my route on Strava and show it to you because I decided I'd trace out a nice route and make a Strava map. So here it is. I did tell the AI, no, you have to follow the roads. I'm not going to be able to ride through those buildings. It might be more wiggly. It said, of course you're right. Let me try again. So there you go. Yeah, my talk today is about SLOs. We heard a lot earlier at the keynote about how AIs are going to be writing a lot more code. There'll be more code per engineer, and there are going to be more incidents, right? We're going to have less context over the code that we're looking at. More incidents, well, what's immediately upstream of the incidents is alerts. We'll probably see a lot more alerts. And how might we try to keep control of those alerts and, try and make them better quality, fewer better quality alerts? Well, SLOs is a fantastic tool for that. That's why I'm here talking about SLOs today. SLOs is a pretty big topic, not something I could cover in 20 minutes. And there's plenty of material out there already. I'm going to pick off a small piece, which is multi-dimensional SLOs. So some of this content might be a bit new, I'm hoping. To get there, I'm going to hang my examples off a real concrete service that I was helping us run at Grafana Labs and what our SLOs were. I'm going to talk about just a little bit of foundation, what are SLOs, bring some of you along if you don't have that foundation knowledge. And then when we get to the multi-dimensional SLOs, which is the bulk of the talk, I'll talk about a lot of toil and an incident that I faced at work. Then the history and the lead up to that week at work where we were adding dimensions and reaping some benefits. And then after that, we did some cleanup and consolidated, simplified. So that's what I'm going to cover. And our goal with this is to just get more uptime, more reliability, and to reduce alert fatigue, reduce that operational burden and the toil. So we'll see if we get there. We'll see if we deliver. Okay, I work at Grafana. Our flagship project is Grafana itself. This is Grafana. It's where you might build dashboards, visualize all your observability signals in one place. So that could mean putting your logs right next to your metrics, zooming in on a spike in your metrics, seeing the logs at that instant. It might also be where your AI agent, if you're using an AI agent like the demo earlier today, that agent is querying Grafana, getting the telemetry from Grafana, and also looking at all those dashboards. Now, people use all kinds of different providers for metrics, for logs, for traces, and for their SQL data sources as well. So Grafana is more powerful if we support a lot of different data sources, right? The first thing you do when you query is pick a data source. And so in the UI, that's here. This was my team. This is what I was working on. So we're here in the UI. This is the piece we're talking about. I was in a department where we had 4 squads, 50 different data sources. These 4 squads, we had some shared code and a shared on-call rotation. And this is the service that we were running. Our client was Grafana itself, the UI and the alert manager. And then we would call out to the customer's backend, a metrics backend, a logs backend, whatever it might be. And this was a multi-tenant service. So we'd have different Grafana tenants calling to us and reaching out to different customer backends. And then we drew our boundary for our SLO and our service here. We considered our client as the Grafana instance calling out to us. So it wasn't we didn't choose to have a customer-facing SLO. The reason we did that was it allowed us to kind of isolate and measure our own performance, and we could see what our effects were on the system. When we made an improvement, we could see it immediately, basically. And the other thing that will help you understand the story later is to know that when we're measuring SLOs in Grafana Labs, we count requests. We're not counting minutes or hours, we're actually counting requests. And so we count the number of successes on the top of the fraction and the total number of requests on the bottom of the fraction. And we're trying to keep that above 99.5%. So hopefully that context will help you understand the rest of the story. So and we also have an SLO product on Grafana Cloud. I encourage you to, lots of people will pull Grafana open source, host it themselves, and even our metrics and logs backends, we have Mimir, Loki, Tempo. People will run those in-house themselves as well. More and more, we have some amazing solutions on Grafana Cloud, only accessible there. One of those is our SLO product. And of course, we dog feed this. We use it internally to track our own SLOs. So this is a report all the engineers in the whole company, that's like 500 engineers, receive every week. You can see top left, 611, that's the number of different SLOs that we now track across all of our teams. This has worked really well for Grafana Labs. Our CTO says it has been so transformational for the culture of how we measure our performance at Grafana Labs. And like, why is that? It's basically because, you know, as we put our attention to the SLOs, we can switch off all these other alerts that are looking at all kinds of different things, you know. We roll up all of our alerting into SLOs and alert on those. And so receiving this report in our inbox every Monday, it helps keep us accountable. And so we do look after our own SLOs. We try pretty hard to keep them green. But another thing that happens is if our SLO is too high, too close to 100%, the CTO will come to us and will say, you know, that's too good. You're not taking enough risks here. You know, don't invest so much in reliability, be more innovative. So that's pretty cool, pretty interesting. All right, but what are these SLOs? So I'll quickly dive in. So that book on the right, Site Reliability Engineering, the SRE book from Google, that's our kind of that's our reference that we give to new joiners joining the company. So I'd highly recommend that. There are these terms, SLA, SLI, SLO. So SLA, that's the agreement, service level agreement. That's what is in your contract. If you breach that, you might give credits for the month, that kind of thing. The SLI, that's your indicator. That's where you're at versus where you want to be, the current performance. And then the SLO, that's the objective. That's where you're trying to get to. It's your target. It's an internal target that you don't publish to your customers necessarily. And it's a product decision. And that might change over time. You might choose to change it again as a product decision. And this is it's a compromise between what your customers can tolerate, you know, and what they're happy with, and what you can tolerate internally in terms of how much you're willing to spend and how much you can invest in reliability. So it might be higher than your SLA. You might be more ambitious internally than what you commit to in your SLA with your customers. So, and this is my own like high-level summary of these SLOs. It's not just this acronym, service level objective, but it's become this kind of this practice that's evolved, and all of these techniques around how to manage this and how to reap the benefits. So you start from, you know, 100% uptime is completely unachievable, but also it's not at all cost effective. And we're trying to get good value for money. We want value for money. So we're going to pick a realistic target, such as, in our case, 99.5%. And then what we're going to do is track performance versus that target. We're not going to track performance over like 5, 10, 15 minutes, as maybe the alerts that, you know, the SLOs have replaced might have been doing, but instead we're tracking performance on a monthly basis. We're going to use an error budget, and we're going to see how much of that budget remains at any point in the month, and we're going to track, you know, that's the downtime that we're allowed each month, and we're going to use it. You know, if we have some downtime allowance, why not use it? And then, but if you burn through the whole of your error budget, the idea, at least in the SRE book, is that you then switch the team from your innovation and feature work onto reliability work until you are back inside your SLO, basically. So then, building on that, how do you alert on these SLOs? Well, the practice that we see as the industry kind of standard now is this multi-window, multi-burn rate alerting. This is one of the references we use. And just the idea here is, if you're burning through your error budget super fast and you're going to blow it all in minutes or hours, then you need to page someone. So that would then kick off a paging alert. Otherwise, if you're burning very slowly, you can just raise a ticket, a warning alert, and someone can tackle that when they're at their desk, when they come to work in the morning. And so going forwards for the rest of these slides, I'm just going to use red to indicate these paging alerts and orange just to illustrate ticket alerts. And this is kind of like, I'm going to show some illustrations and it's kind of to tell the story. Okay, so coming back to me and my own experience with that product data sources that I was working on. I'd actually switched teams into this department, and it was my second time on call with them. And it was not really fun. Alerts are firing, loads of alerts. These warning alerts are coming in faster than I can resolve them. It's like Tuesday, Wednesday. I've like not closed any of these alerts, and there's already a second or third one appearing. And I'm investigating the new one that's just come in, and I can see that one of our apps is crashing. It's crashing intermittently. I can see that it's not consistently responding with errors, but it is dropping some requests and sending some errors back to customers, a fraction. And I think, okay, that's not great. Our guidance is pretty clear internally. It's like, if there's might be customer impact, then go ahead and raise an incident. So I do that. I raise an incident, and I'm about to update the status page, and a colleague of mine who's now on the incident call says to me, "This is not big enough for the status page." And I'm like, "Oh wow, okay." So we have a bit of an argument now. It's like I'm saying to him, this is affecting customers. Surely we can put it up on the status page. We also have guidance around this. It's like, if we know something's wrong, why not put it on the status page straight away? Customers would much rather come and see. But he did have a point, and that's what this talk is about. So, but anyway, coming back to this goal, we definitely weren't delivering yet upon less alert fatigue and less toil. And we weren't. One of the things you're supposed to get with SLOs is alignment in the team and across teams. We were not getting that either. And so, how could that be? SLOs are a super powerful tool, and yet if you use them in the wrong way, you're not going to get those benefits. Okay, so let me talk about dimensional SLOs. So maybe winding back the clock a few years, we were running we might have had one SLO that was a roll-up SLO for the whole of our service. And that's green, and everyone's happy. We're laughing all the way to the bank. Not so fast. Unfortunately, we then start to roll our project to different regions. We're actually rolling it to different cloud providers. This is Grafana Cloud, and running it in different countries. And suddenly we're in a situation where a couple of our regions might be basically perfect, and another of the regions might be really, really suffering, and we wouldn't be able to see it from that top level. So we don't want to let one of those regions turn orange and stay there, because it won't be competitive, and we'll lose customers. So it's in our interests to keep every single region good, so every region is competitive, right? So what we do is we introduce a dimension to the SLO. I've said region, so in our case it was cluster, but in any of your cases you could call it region or country, whatever you like. And we gained that benefit. We were able to then bring all of our regions to parity, hit the objective. But we gained other benefits as well. So when we were then rolling out new code, and we'd roll it out not everywhere at once, we'd roll it out cluster by cluster. And as soon as it hit that first cluster, we might see that the SLO would drop, and it would allow us to stop propagating errors all through the system. So that was another benefit we gained. And then a third benefit of this approach is that, if your top level goes out of SLO, you can drill in very quickly and kind of see where the cause of the issue is coming from. So this was a win. This was, we made these changes and we benefited. This was a real win. In practice, your regions won't be all the same size, and the smaller ones couldn't be even worse. If you don't have that dimension on your SLO, the small ones can be really, really bad, but they'll be hidden because they're so small that they don't affect the top number enough to be spotted, basically. And so our SLOs are written in Prometheus, so we just add the region label there in order to get this granularity on the SLO. So far, so good. But I told you that I worked in this data sources team and we're running these 50 data sources. Now, I've written by product here. In our case, this was data sources. It could be endpoints that you own. It could be like customer segments or customer plans, whatever it might be. But the truth is, you care about other dimensions to the service that you're running. And so we wanted to keep all of those different data sources performing well. We didn't want to abandon Jira and abandon GitHub and find that like suddenly our customers were all using someone else's product. So that's what we did. We add another dimension. And so suddenly we are watching this SLO, which has two dimensions now, region and product, and it kind of breaks down like this. And again, we reap benefits, and this is like there was an issue with one of our data sources, Mongo. As soon as we introduced this product dimension to our SLO, we spotted this issue with Mongo, and we were able to fix it. And that issue had been hiding for months, if not years, honestly. So this was beneficial, and that's the extra label coming into the SLO. But can you see a potential problem with this? We've gone from one thing on the left to 12 things on the right, and we haven't actually changed our objective. The objective itself, 99.5, that has stayed the same. Now the cardinality here, the count of boxes, the number of grains can blow up pretty fast. So we had 50 plugins, 50 data sources, like I told you. We actually had 25 clusters around the world across these different countries, different cloud providers. And suddenly the total cardinality was over 1,000, and we're trying to keep 1,000 things inside SLO without changing the SLO that we're actually aiming for. And so suddenly, this wasn't even the day that I was on call. I just picked a random day and I pointed this dashboard at a random day. You can see like 3 paging and 6 warning alerts. So this was like broken for us at this point. It was not working. The toil was too great. And specifically, like, you can see the whole service is green. Everything looks healthy. Like, in terms of the number of pixels, right? The general trend here is everything is green. There's a few orange patches. The red patches are tiny, tiny, tiny. And so you ask yourself, well, okay, on some level we care. On some level we care. But we've got to prioritize. We've got to invest our attention and our resources sensibly. That's what SLOs are all about. It's about, be wise with where we're spending money. And we concluded that those red regions are just too small, at least for this stage in the project and for where we were that period of the product development. They're just too small. We needed to, and we didn't even have this visual. We didn't even, unfortunately, it's easy to see that now, right? It's easy to see when I show it to you in this visual that they are tiny. But we didn't even have that. All we had was a stream of alerts, and they all looked equally big. So that was painful for us when we were on call, because you couldn't make that decision in the heat of the moment. Let's forget about this one. So how can you fix this? There's a few different ways. Amazon, for S3, they take one approach. They have like this 4 nines, 99.99 for the roll-up, the top level SLO, but for like small zones within that, they use a much looser target of 99.5. So that's one thing you could do. It does add a bit of complexity. Suddenly you're like managing different targets for different levels of your SLO. Another thing you could do is to kind of reduce the cardinality. You could just move from this one SLO that had 2 dimensions to having 2 separate SLOs, each that have 1 dimension. So you've got one with the region dimension, for example, one with the product dimension, and like the cardinality massively drops. So on the left, we've got 12 boxes on the screen, on the right, 7. But in our real case, it went from 1,000 down to less than 100. So it's an order of magnitude less, far, far more manageable. This is what I pitched to the team internally. Another thing you could do probably is group together all those tiny, tiny little boxes, group them together into bigger boxes. So here on the right, we've got one region, America, and then other regions. And we've got one product A and then other products grouped together. And again, you can see the cardinality drops and it becomes more manageable. But again, like this one adds some complexity too, because you're going from one SLO to two. This one adds a bit of complexity as well. This one, you're having to choose like which of the label values, which of the items are going to be grouped together and which are not, you know, and those things need to be maintained. Another solution might be one where you, instead of adding complexity, you're like simplifying and removing complexity, you just throw out one of the dimensions. So here on the right, we've just got the product dimension. We've actually just thrown away the region dimensions. So this is removing complexity, and with it, like hopefully reducing that toil and reducing that kind of constant interruption, allowing ourselves to invest more, prioritize better, you know, our reliability work, but we lose some of the benefits. We now lose that view of the regions. But this was what we went for. We removed it fitted our priorities. We needed to simplify, and you know, that was the more important thing for us at that moment in time. And the SRE book says, you know, keep it simple, have as few SLOs as possible, and perfection can wait. And so at the exact same, when we remove the dimension on the same day at the same time, we get down to just one warning alert. And that was something we could move forwards with, you know. So we think we're there now. We've got more uptime and less burden, less alert fatigue. Thank goodness. So this is an interesting question. Was my colleague right? I mean, he had actually asked on the day, you know, should this even have been an incident? The truth is we dropped like very few requests and the error budget burn was slow. We did fix it in a few days and we saw that the SLI recovered and it came back in before the end of the month. And the point there is that errors, you know, as long as you keep within your SLO, errors are acceptable. And that's ultimately the whole point of SLOs. We should allow ourselves to make errors as long as we're within our target. So he was right to a degree, but we don't want false alarms. I'm sure you don't either. And we don't want to have arguments and make calls like this one every time an alert fires or every time we're in an incident room. So we took the opportunity to clean up the SLO, cut down on those false alarms. And once we had done that, we agreed as a team that we would not hesitate to create incidents or indeed update the status page. With better quality alerts, it's easier to do those things. So yeah, the takeaways, SLOs are very powerful. They can also be very painful. I think do use dimensions and do use granularity as much as you can bear. They can help you to keep the subsections of your service really healthy. They can help you to spot issues early before they cascade outwards. They can help you to quickly drill down to root causes. On the other hand, do exercise restraint, balance those dimensions and that granularity against the toil and the complexity that it brings. And yeah, like these things are all available on Grafana Cloud. So if you are interested to give it a go, then yeah, please do. That's me. Thank you very much.